Welcome to the Process Breakdown Podcast, where we talk about streamlining and scaling operations of your company, getting rid of bottlenecks, and giving your employees all the information they need to be successful at their jobs. Now, let's get started with the show.
Dr. Jeremy Weisz here, host of the Process Breakdown Podcast, where we talk about streamlining and scaling operations of your company, getting rid of bottlenecks, and giving your staff everything they need to be successful at their job. Wendy's nodding along with me, if you can't see her, because she knows exactly what we're talking about. And we're going to be talking about those things. She's going to break it down step by step, the onboarding process of new staff, contractors, everything like that. Before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by Sweet Process. Now, have you had team members ask you the same questions over and over and over again? It means there's a better way. One of the big solutions, Sweet Process, is a software that makes it drop dead easy to train and onboard new staff and save time with existing staff. And not only do universities, banks, hospitals, and software companies use it, but there's actually first responder government agencies that use it in life or death situations to run their operations. So you can use Sweet Process to document all the repetitive tasks that eat up your precious time, so you can focus on growing your team and your company. And you can just sign up for a free 14-day trial, no credit card required. You can go to sweetprocess.com, sweet like candy, SWEET process.com. And I'm excited to introduce today's guest. We have Wendy Tadokoro, who runs the Australian-based company Organizing Works. If you're wondering where to find it, it's actually with an S, because if you're in Australia, that's how you spell it, right? Organizing, that's right, with an S, organizingworks.com.au. But they create, improve, and document systems for growth. Wendy works with business owners worldwide who are spending too much time on low-value tasks and not getting the results that they want. So check it out. Wendy, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So I talk about streamline and automate your new hire onboarding process. That's just such a cumbersome, time-consuming. The quicker we can get people onboarded, the more productive they could be. It just saves so much time, money, and makes money. I wonder if you could talk about it in the sense of real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I work with all different types of industries, and real estate is just one that's come up recently because the onboarding process that we just always associate with employees is actually the process that you can modify to also induct into your business contractors, or in the case of a real estate company, for example, the brokers or the agents that you bring into the business. So what we use for employees can easily be just modified. And the key is to have a process. That's what it's all about. So a process is something where you can refine it and rinse and repeat it. So I chose this topic because I work with businesses, and there's an enormous amount of processes in a business. And the ones that are typically unique to most businesses is their operations. Okay, so that's something that they would do differently to, say, another. So if you're a hairdressing business, you're going to have operations that you do slightly different to another hairdresser, for example. However, with onboarding, there's always at some point a business is going to onboard staff members. Hopefully not too often, but in some cases, larger businesses will they will actually employ in batches. Maybe they'll have 10 people come through at once. So I chose this subject because at some point in your business, you're going to take on staff, whether it's contractors, agents, remote workers, etc. Yeah,
or replace staff. Someone leaves,
absolutely.
Someone moves. I mean, right now we're in the where people are working remotely, but if you're not, people move and they move on, or whatever the case is. So what do you do first? So the company comes to you. What's the first thing you do?
Do with the onboarding process?
Yeah, with the onboarding process, yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, the onboarding process, just going back to the reason why I chose this topic, is because it can take so much time. And it can take a lot of time if it's not done in an organized manner. So as I talked before about the process, really important to have a process. So the first thing is to set that process up. And so one of the ways to do it is you could, when somebody's actually coming on board, is to start to document what you do when that person comes on board. If you're in a position where you're just about to hire someone and you need that onboarding process, you need some of those sort of aspects of that in place, then you start to put that in place before they come on board. So there's a couple of different ways depending on, what situation you're in. But the first thing is like pretty much with any process, not even an onboarding process, is to have a plan. And that's one of the biggest things, the biggest challenges about is that they just say, well, when the new person turns up, we figure it out on the day. So the first thing is to have a plan. So think back maybe to how if you recently onboarded somebody, the things that you would need. The other thing is to get your team involved. So if you have other team members, it's not just on the business owner or the manager or even the HR person. It's not one person's role to onboard a team member. So get your team in place. That's probably the next thing that you do. Once you've got that plan, and then it's important to then, once you've written that plan, is exactly that, to write it out, to document it somewhere, okay? And that could just start off with a checklist.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's so important to point out, Wendy, sometimes business owners feel like it falls on them, and they don't realize, listen, I could give a team member this, and they could actually onboard someone. So Fring, is there a time where you had to point that out to someone? You're like, hey, by the way, you don't have to do all this. You could actually have a team member do that.
Well, absolutely. That's one of the reasons I do what I do, because my clients come to me because their business is reliant on them. And one of the first things we look at is, well, what are you doing? What are you filling up your days with? Is it that low value stuff that really is just, the churn, the daily stuff that has to be done, but why are you doing that? Same with onboarding. Absolutely, there is a role for the business owner or the CEO, but it's actually quite a small role. And a lot of that you can actually do, because we're going to talk about that today, about automating things. You can do a lot of that before that the new team members even turned up on the first day. So if you've got this process in place, you're going to have roles. And one of the roles could be, if you've got an HR department, would be somebody from HR, would be a manager or a team leader, or maybe even a supervisor. And possibly the other role would be what I call the buddy. So having somebody team up with that new team member when they come on board. So when they've got lots of questions, which they will have, you've got somebody else who can answer those questions, so that you're not, as the business owner, the one that has to be there and taking them through the training. So this is why your plan's going to include training as well. And if you've got all that in place, it is really just rolling out this process. And it's streamlined because you're going to have people knowing what they're going to be doing in that role. So there's a whole process around that of assigning tasks to other team members.
The Wendy buddy system. Buddy someone up.
Buddy someone up. Yeah, absolutely. And just with that, also give them some training. Don't just throw it on them and say, hey, we've got John starting tomorrow.
Right, exactly. Good luck. My new system is giving them a buddy. That's not a system, right?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of do's and don'ts with and one of the things is, make sure that you announce the new hire to the team, and that they are trained in what their role is. And they've got time in their schedule as well. Like I said, don't just dump it on them. Just make sure that you can schedule in. So with the buddy, get that extra time, a few hours to spend one-on-one with them. Even their manager, so their new hires role, they're going to have a manager or a supervisor, and maybe the wider team that they need to be introduced to as well. Have that time set aside so you can schedule that. Best thing to do is lunch, is to introduce everyone to the team, but have everybody schedule that time so that they're not looking at it as an interruption to their day. It's very important that, because we haven't actually approached this, but one of the biggest reasons that you lose staff is because they don't enjoy working at your company. And that comes, we could talk for hours about culture, but culture is very, very important. So onboarding is part of that. And it's that impression that you give to a new team member when they come through. Yeah. To say, look, we're a professional organization. We've got our act together here. We know what we're doing. We've done this several times over. And that is going to form that impression even before the first day. And so that's very important. And that's going to help you retain that staff, because we know that's where the costs come in, where you've got high turnover of staff or agents, whatever it is that you're onboarding.
That's a good point. They come on board, everything's in disarray. They're just, they're unorganized. They're confused. They don't know what to do. That's a bad first impression, and it's, absolutely. What are some things that you've seen people include, or that you tell people to include in their onboarding that helps with culture? So the buddy, having them like a dedicated person is great, because then they just can always ask questions. What are some other things that'll help with actual culture with the onboarding?
Having your processes, your systems, your procedures, your policies, and your training, having it documented. So one of the worst things is somebody just turns up on the first day and you're running around trying to find a document that you've got somewhere on a hard drive. Once you find it, it's out of date. You go and print it and you get them a paper copy. It's not looking very professional. Imagine if you could have all of that documented with the things that they could do I keep mentioning this, before they even come in. So to streamline this, but very important to start with is what we call welcome email. So in that email is where you want to start to set those expectations. And that could be, you've got some online training modules. Even if you're just assigning them to the welcome to the company section of that training, so that they can, possibly see the team members before they start, know a little bit more about the culture. Maybe they've already read something on the website, but the welcome to the company is the internal document that talks more in depth about the culture, about the core values, the mission statements, and all that sort of thing, and really giving them that sort of first experience of the company. So having all that documented, having, for example, just things like digital forms makes it so much more streamlined than, say, sending them a whole load of attachments that you're asking them to print off and sign and bring with them, and just making the whole process smoother. That's all part of your culture as well, to say, we're a systemized business, so this is the way we do things here. And that starts from the very second, well, really from the whole process of recruitment as well, but it really gets instilled when they accept that offer, and you start to show them this is the way we work here. So that will set the tone. Absolutely. Yeah.
So when I want to walk through from the employee standpoint for a second. So I get hired, I maybe get a welcome email talking about here's our core values, here's our mission. This is an ideal scenario, a Wendy ideal scenario, an organizing works polished over scenario, right? And then I get the email, then I go to the website, I review the core values, the mission, then I come in, I'm given this portal with online training, I'm assigned a buddy to walk me through it, ask me questions, and maybe during lunch, or if it's in person or not, just doing a team introduction. What else? What happens next? What else should I fill in there, or that happens next?
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk phases. I like to break things down so we haven't got a visual to show, but if you think of a process, so there's that phase just before they start, which is around that welcome email. So they've accepted the offer, and you're giving all the expectations through that email of what they're going to expect on the first day, because it's quite scary starting a new job. So explaining what time they need to be there, what they need to bring with them, where they can park, all those sorts of things. So that starts off that sort of relationship. And then, so that's the first phase. And then as part of that as well, actually, is the formality. So there's always those things that you have to do, the compliance, the government forms that you've got to fill in, okay? Let's sort of get all of those out of the way. And if we can get those out of the way before they come, I call it, it's not much fun on the first day sitting them down and say, like, here's 10 forms, can you fill them out and sign them, and then we'll be with you later on. Yeah. If you can do that, like I mentioned, using, like, for example, a digital form, all that formality is done. When they arrive, you can do what I call the fun stuff. That's where you start to show them around, show them facilities, make them feel comfortable. That's really important. Yes, during that day, you can probably get to some of those things that maybe they haven't signed previously. So that's the formality side of things. So let's get most of that out of the way. And then the day they arrive is what I call their orientation day, or some people call it an induction day. Now, for some businesses, it might be longer than one day, depending on the size and how many people and offices they've got to go and visit. But that first day is crucial. And also in that welcome email, you're going to explain the schedule for that day. I would even go to the extent of, hour by hour. In the morning, we're going to have a morning tea, and then we're going to introduce you to the team. And then maybe by the afternoon, they might be doing some online training, for example. So let them know what those expectations are for that first day. So we've got the formalities, then we've got the orientation day, okay? And then we've got the next period of onboarding. Now, this can vary between businesses, but typically I like to say you want to do at least 3 months. An onboarding phase will go for that long, because 3 months, I don't know about in the US, but I know in Australia we have a probationary period. So typically at the end of that 3 months is where you will agree to, you either part ways or you continue to work together. So we need to build up to that. So I like to put the reviews in. So let's say at the end of week 1, Okay, they've done some online training. So I like to blend online training with on-the-job training or shadowing, and another your buddy or employee. So the onboarding will go for really as long as it needs to, but let's say typically 3 months. So we've got the orientation. So that next phase is the training and the reviewing of their performance. So also, I don't know if I've mentioned it, making it really clear as well on that first day, going over maybe with the business owner and the CEO, what their role is, what their expectations, if you're assigning them KPIs, making that really clear. And then setting that schedule, say for the first week, this is going to be your training for the first week. This is what we want you to achieve. And then I would then break that up to the first week, the first month, the second month, and then the third month.
I love it. What are some of the big mistakes you've come in and you've helped reorganize, or maybe organize in general, because people have nothing sometimes, but what are some of the big mistakes that people make in this process?
The mistakes, number one, they don't have a plan. They don't build the process. Okay, so they wing it every time somebody new comes in. It's usually a big rush. We've got to get someone on board. We need to get them up to speed really quickly, because some people associate that with their ROI. We've got to get return on investment of a new employee, so we've got to get them up to speed. But in that rush, we're not getting. That's when they start to make mistakes. That's when they start to lose confidence in their position. So we might think that we're speeding up the process, but that's one of the big mistakes. So not having a process is the biggest mistake. The second mistake is doing everything manually. Going to find those paper forms, getting all the follow-up when somebody doesn't send a form back. For example, make it easy for them, make it streamlined. So using automation to save time. The other thing is assigning those roles is another mistake. So the business owner is trying to do the whole thing, while they're running around wearing all the other hats. So as I said, delegate that. Just your role is to on day one, do the greetings, do the introductions, maybe spend a little time, an hour or so, maybe take them for lunch. All the rest of that can be delegated to other team members. So assigning other team members. And then the other mistake is not using that process next time. We call rinse and repeat and refine it. They're the key things I would emphasize. And that's the things that a lot of business owners don't do. So they reinvent the wheel every time somebody starts.
Nice. Wendy, I have two last questions. All right.
Yep.
Before I do, I want to point people to your site. All right.
Yes.
Organizing Works with an S. All right. And people can check out other episodes of the podcast, check out Sweet Process. Also, you were talking about automation. I know you love automation. Yes. Let's talk about some smart tools.
Absolutely.
Smart tools.
I love digital forms, so that's would probably be one of the easiest to implement as well. So digital form is just basically, instead of sending them a copy of a PDF form or even handing them pieces of paper, have those forms. And there's so many. If you just Google digital forms, there's form stack forms, type forms, any type of form, and some of them have more features depending on what you want. Basically what somebody's doing is filling out a form and pressing submit, and then it can also upload documents. So if you're asking for copies of their driving license, your official document forms that you're asking for, they can actually also be digitized, which not many people realize that you can also do that. It's not just for your own internal documents. So have those where they're just submitting, and then you're not having to the other end, when you're submitting a form, you can have that actually set up where it actually files it into a folder. So think of all the steps when you're doing that manually. What you have to do is take copies of things and then put them into a folder manually, where you can set up that automation.
And you lose it.
It's done. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Where did I file that? Also have those digital folders set up as well for each team member. Another thing, another great automation is I've mentioned about having your policies, processes, and your training online. So that could be a learning management system. So that's where a program like Sweet Process is valuable, because that's where, if you've got all that stored in there, it's just a matter of then assigning that to the new team member. Keep that updated. Also, with any learning management system, blend your learning. Don't just put a whole load of text or just upload a whole load of PDFs that you've got in there. Actually think through the process. What you can do as well as any of these learning management systems, including Sweet Process, you can put videos in there. You can put You can put diagrams in there. Pretty much you can embed forms. Whatever your imagination is, you can make it truly engaging with your learning. But like I said, blend that with on-the-job training as well. Don't assign too much to somebody on their first day or in that welcome email, just those essential sort of modules. So we've talked about digital forms, learning. The other learning management system, the other thing is as well, I think every business should have a project management program, like Asana or Trello. And this is where you're assigning those roles. So if you don't assign a role to somebody, and when I say a role, I mean a list. I would make a checklist for what they need to do. So we've talked about the buddy, the manager, the HR manager. You may even have a training manager involved. Make sure they know what their role is for that orientation day, and then moving forward, and assign that. If you just tell them in a meeting that next week we've got somebody starting, we want you to do X, Y, Z, often that accountability part will be missing. So make sure you assign it in a task management program.
Yeah. And you like
Asana
or Trello? Is there any others that you like?
Oh gosh, pretty much anything that you can put a checklist into. You could even use a program like Sweet Process. You can put your checklist.
I know people
use
them in combination. They'll like have something in Asana, but they'll have one of the Sweet Process. So it's not like this long thing in Asana. Here's the Sweet Process piece, and you can follow it from there.
So the difference is with a learning management system or somewhere where you're putting process and policies, that's where you learn how to do the work. A program like Asana is where you do the work. That's where you're assigning it. You're not putting the how-to part in there. You're just putting, this is what needs to be done. So with a checklist, the great thing about a project management system is you can duplicate that template. So every time a new broker starts or a new agent, a new employee starts, you can just run that, they call it a project, or a task list, and just tick off the things to make sure you've done. So if you're the HR manager, have you got those forms signed? Yeah. Have you got their uniform size? Have you issued keys? All of those things. I mean, we haven't even talked about what goes into some of these steps, but there's a lot. But once you've done it, once you've documented, you've got it into a project management system, or you've got a checklist somewhere, that is your process. Okay. So you can just rinse and repeat that. And the other type of tools really there could, for example, I've talked about video. So that's a great tool to speed up. It could be face-to-camera video for welcoming messages, but also as well as I train all my clients on how to use software for recording your screen. So screencasting, we call it. Really quick to do tutorials when you want to show them how to do something. So it may even be you've got a complicated form or something you need to explain. You could send a video with that. You could even send that video in the welcome email, for example. So we've got video, and then we've got calendars.
What do you like for that, Wendy, for any screencasting you go to?
Loom is a popular one. It's a nice free one, loom.com. I use Cloud App. There's Snagit. There's Screencastify. there's lots. Yep.
Thank you.
And a Mac has a built-in one as well. So no excuses not to use one.
No, I use Loom. It's like a Google Chrome plugin. You can just put it right in there. And I've used Screencastify. It's super simple. You can go to Google Chrome and just have it right there. Boom, you just click it and you're ready to go.
So many uses. If somebody asks you, maybe you want to reply to their question, showing them an example. Anything that you do that's computer based, I would say you use a screen recording tool. So they've got lots of uses. Obviously a digital calendar, you need that to be able to booking all those, the orientation day, the training, any other things, any lunch meetings with other team members. And then finally,
any ones you like for that, Wendy? Digital calendar?
Calendar. Well, my go-to calendar is Google Calendar. So it's Google or Outlook is pretty much the two calendars. As long as it's a digital calendar where you can book appointments and meetings in there. And then messaging is this is a nice to have. It's not essential. But if you've got a large company, then I would say like a messaging channel, something like Slack, Microsoft Teams, where you could actually set up. Especially if you're batching. So if you've got a lot of people starting at the same time, you could have a channel for those so everybody feels more comfortable. They're in that environment. Maybe have the buddy in there and a few team members.
Hashtag hazing. No, I'm just kidding.
Is it
the hazing channel for the new recruits?
New recruit, the rookies. Okay,
Yeah.
but just something to feel that then later on maybe bring them into the wider channels. But that's
Right.
that's just an idea, especially if you've nowadays with a lot of onboarding that's done remotely, because you can do all of this remotely, of course. Unfortunately, the tour of the office might not, be that
Virtual
great,
tour.
but virtual tour of the office. But yeah, so any tools like that where you can start conversations, you can even have happy hours on Slack or a messaging channel as well, if you're remote. So yeah, there's some of the tech tools that I would be using to help to automate and streamline this process.
Wendy, thanks for sharing that. People always love those tools. And how'd you get into doing this?
Oh, good question. Because it just seems so natural. I've been doing this for so long. I think where it first started was when I worked for a corporation many years ago that was just super organized. And it was one of my early jobs after leaving college. And it's really all I knew. And it wasn't until I left that business that I realized that other businesses didn't work like that.
That's not normal.
It's not normal. And I could see it from a perspective as an employee. And I really struggled working in other businesses and I thought, well, I just come from somewhere that I knew what I was doing. I was confident in what I was doing in my job. I had checklists. I had all the resources I need. And then I found that when I worked for other corporations, they didn't have that in place. And so I realized that there was a gap there for smaller businesses that didn't have the same resources as, say, a larger corporation. And so I started out starting with sort of tipping my toes into the work with professional organizing, actually organizing workspaces. And then it evolved to working when I really understood what business owners, I could see what they were doing everything basically in their business and helping them to put systems and processes in place. So ultimately they could have the business that they started off, the vision that they wanted. So ultimately it's around being able to have that freedom in your business and being able to take time off when you want to and just work the hours that you choose.
Yeah. Wendy, I want to be the first one to thank you. You felt the pain point from a employee perspective and from this is how it should be to
Absolutely.
The stark contrast of this is so disorganized, it's a terrible experience. So I could see why you do what you do. So I want to be the first one to thank you. Check out the website, check out other episodes, and appreciate it, Wendy.
No, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to the Process Breakdown Podcast. Before you go, quick question. Do you want a tool that makes it easy to document processes, procedures, and/or policies for your company so that your employees have all the information they need to be successful at their job? If yes, sign up for a free 14-day trial of Sweet Process. No credit card is required to sign up. Go to sweetprocess.com, sweet like candy, and process like process.com. Go now to sweetprocess.com and sign up for your risk-free 14-day trial.